Hey guys, my name is Julia and I'm the creator of the channel. Today we will discuss the story you sent me. If you like the content, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, and leave a comment down below. So let's start it.
I got an anonymous call saying that my wife was cheating on me, but then I saw video proof. My, male 36, wife, female 34, cheated on me back in 2019. I was blindsided, and I wanted to share because I was told my reaction was a little unhealthy. After I was played like some kind of fool, I wanted to understand why some women were so untrustworthy. My wife had showed me she had no loyalty, even though I did what I needed to keep her happy. Me and my wife got married 6 years ago, and we were in a good place from the beginning. I worked handling the accounts at my company, and she was a STNA nurse when I met her. We rented a nice house and wasn't in any real debt. We were good at managing our money, so spending wasn't a problem. We communicated easily, worked good as a team, and getting physical at night was easy because she was just gorgeous and kept her looks up always. Our family had got along good. Me and her brother, Jacob, was practically best friends. He worked as the custodian at the hospital she worked at, thanks to their mom, and we always looked out for her little brother. My wife was clearly an independent woman, and she could always think for herself. She always had a sense of confidence and demanded respect from me and Jacob. We didn't have kids, but I felt like if we did, she would be a good inspiration. But the problem with her was that she had toxic friends around her. The way they talked about each other made me feel like they were more like rivals than anything. They would talk about each other all week, but party together and claim they were sisters. Not only that, they would get into terrible arguments, especially when they were drunk. I can't count how many times they had a falling out with each other. Then the next week, they would go out on a girls' trip to be on vacation. I was told that girls secretly can be in competition with each other, so I thought it was just typical. It could be annoying, but I just took the good for the bad. I just thought it was normal between the five of them. The affair happened when her friend Erica was about to get married. Before the marriage, it's normal to have their wild party, so my wife and her friends left that night to throw Erica the party they planned at the hotel. I knew they were going to be out all night, so I didn't bother waiting up for her. A couple days after the wedding, I was getting ready to hop in the shower that night when I heard my phone ringing in the bedroom. At the time, I wasn't sure if that's what I heard, so I just hopped in the shower. When I came out of the shower, I saw I had 6 missed calls, and they were from the same number. This was weird to me, so I didn't call the person back since I didn't know who this person was. When I was in my living room, the number called again, and even though I didn't know the number, I decided to pick up. When I answered, nobody answered back at first, and all I could hear was a girl talking to a guy in the background. After saying hello 3 times, I just hung up. After that, they called again, and I immediately picked up the phone. This time the girl answered me back, and I realized it was one of my wife's friends. I asked her friend, let's just call her Jasmine, why she was calling me. She immediately started calling my wife names and saying she cheated on me at the party. This had put a real fear in me, but I still said she didn't know what she was talking about. She said she did know, and that she had recorded it as proof to show me. I asked her what she was talking about, and she told me everything. She said at Erica's party, they had hired some guys to come there and dance for everyone. Since my wife was extra friendly to one of the guys, he kept coming back to her, and he had crossed the line with her. I couldn't believe what I was hearing, but at the same time, I knew this kind of thing wasn't uncommon. After hearing me not say anything for a minute, Jasmine said if I wanted the evidence, she would send it to my phone. I told her to send it to me, and she said to hang up while she got ready to send it. After about 5 minutes, she sent me 4 video files, and when I looked at them, I had collapsed on the couch seeing the proof. I called Jasmine back, and she asked me did I get it. And while being choked up, I said I did get it. She started calling my wife names again, and told me she was sorry for how she acted. I asked her why she would do this to somebody she claimed was her sister, and she never gave me a direct answer. She just said my wife and her friends were a bunch of hypocrites, and called them fake. I asked how did she get my number, and she reminded me that my wife called her from my phone asking directions for her dinner party that she had at the restaurant. She said she was done being their friend, and said that Erica was doing bad things too. Jasmine said talk to my wife about it, and I told her that she was at another friend's house at the time, but I definitely was. After hanging up, I was falling to pieces. I knew I had to confront her. There was 4 full videos of my wife being with another guy. But after that, I didn't know what my life would be like. And how could she do this to me? I never trusted these parties, but I didn't think it would happen to me. I don't even get invited to these things. When my wife got home, I confronted her as soon as she walked in the door. I asked her how she was doing, and she said she was tired but fine. I told her I never asked her how Erica's party was and did she have fun. She seemed caught off guard a little, but she said it was fine. I told her Jasmine said she had a fun time, and that she even recorded her to show me later. She looked spooked and asked me what I was talking about, and I showed her the videos of her and the guy getting it on that night. First, her jaw dropped, then she screamed at what she saw. She begged me not to leave her, and said Jasmine was just doing this because my wife had replaced her with someone else to be one of Erica's bridesmaids. She said her and Erica got into a big argument about it with her, and Erica uninvited her from the ceremony. When I heard this, I could kind of see why Jasmine was mad, but not to go this far, though. It didn't matter to me because I told her I was getting a divorce, and that's exactly what I did. Through the whole divorce, both of our families wanted us to reconcile. I was told, even though she shouldn't have done it, it was a special night for them, and I wasn't supposed to have known. I told them that was supposed to be for the bride, and even if she was, I wouldn't stay with her. I couldn't believe my wife was doing this with this guy, especially in public. After finally getting divorced, I still couldn't leave the situation alone. I got in touch with other guys that dance and asked them about getting women. I even asked women. The women said they don't, but know girls who did it for extra money. The guys I asked said they get girls all the time, especially the bride. One guy said when he started, it wasn't like that at first, but the women started wanting it, and it just became normal. When I told my friends this, they said it was unhealthy and I should stop talking to them. I don't know. I guess it was just how I was handling it at the time, but I don't see nothing wrong with it. I just couldn't get these videos out of my head, especially when the guy knew she was being secretly recorded. Right now, my ex-wife lives in her own apartment, close to her job somewhere. I used to see her family once in a while, and they still ask me to forgive her because of the circumstance. But I just can't do it. I hate to admit it, but Jasmine was right when she said my ex-wife was a fake friend. But apparently her love was fake too. Now she don't regret it, I hear. Thank you for reading through all of this. And please continue to stay genuine.
Our second story.
I got revenge on my cheating fiancé by tricking her epically. This happened in 1998, give or take a year. I was about 22 and had been dating this girl for about 1.5 years. She was amazingly gorgeous, smart, and funny, so I was pretty crazy about her. She was only 1 year younger than me, but she still lived with her dad, and he was really strict. He has a bunch of rules for her, including curfews, even though she was 21. Amazingly, he thought she was an innocent. but I wasn't even her first. Eventually, he figured out we were having closeness and told her she couldn't see me anymore. We continued dating, but it was more difficult because she was always sneaking. She would often use her cousin as an excuse to get to me, but she would frequently go by his place for a while so she could have a cover story. She said they had been really close since they were kids, so this was normal. Eventually, I found out that her cousin wasn't actually her cousin. He was her dad's best friend's son, but her story was that she had always called him her cousin and thought of him as a cousin. I started noticing more and more things that seemed unusual, and I got really suspicious. One day, she told me she was having lunch at a certain restaurant and would then come over. Shortly after, I got a message on my pager that said meet at Red Lobster at 12. Then I got another message telling me that message was meant for her dad. I jetted over to the restaurant and spotted her car, and I parked way back. Another car pulls up. Her cousin gets out. They hug and kiss and go inside. I went back home to wallow in my misery. I canceled our date for that day, but didn't tell her that I knew. I soon came up with my evil plan. I must tell you about an incident that happened earlier in our relationship. One day she was getting dressed, and I snapped a picture of her backside with an old Polaroid. It was just a close-up of her backside, and there was no way to ID her from the picture. I didn't think she would care at all. She got insanely mad. I've never seen her so mad. She was ready to fight for that picture, but I made an effort to keep it from her. She started trying to rip it up, but couldn't. I told her to hand it to me and I would cut it up. She gets a pen and starts marking it up, then finds scissors and cuts it up. I burned the remains in front of her. She stayed mad for a while and lectured me over and over how she did not want any explicit pictures of her to ever exist. I can't stress enough how much she hated the idea of anybody having photos of her. She was horrified. She didn't talk to me for about a week, and we almost broke up. But she finally accepted that I really didn't think it would have bothered her, and that I would never try it again. Moving on, I had my plan together, and we made plans for her to come back to my place. I was renting a decent house with my best friend, but lived like a bachelor. Very little furniture in my room. I had a bed, computer table with a chair, dresser, an alarm clock on the floor by my bed. I went and got an extra chair from the kitchen and placed it at the foot of my bed. I got another alarm clock and put it on the chair. I intended to make it look obviously out of place. She came over and we made love. I kept my cool and strung this along for another 2 weeks or so, having love 2 to 3 times per week. I made a point to do it different positions and try and keep her angled in a way that the alarm clock was looking directly at her. I wanted to keep it going, but decided enough was enough. Right before we left on the last day, I unplugged the clock, sat it next to my computer, and carried the chair to a different room. I made sure she saw me, but made it look like I was just cleaning up. I started getting cold feet about my plan because I knew how mean it was. I decided to wait a day, which turned into 2. And finally, after about 1 week, I decided to call and confront her. I still wasn't sure if I was going to take revenge or not. I made the call and told her I knew she was seeing her cousin. Can't remember his name. She denied, but I told her that somebody told me they saw them kissing. She finally admitted it, but claimed that it just started this week. I asked, "How can you duck your cousin?" She said, "You know he's not really my cousin." We argue a bit more, and I tell her that I've known for a month. Then she tried to turn it around on me for not saying something when I found out, and she made a really smart comment that I can't remember. I then told her that there was one last thing that she would really want to know. Me: "Do you remember that alarm clock sitting on the chair by my bed?" Her: "Yeah." Me: "Never wondered why it was there?" Her: "Not really." Me: "Think about the last several times we had closeness. How we did this at the foot of the bed. with you facing the foot and so on. Her. What the heck are you saying? Me. It was a ducking spy cam, you disgusting cousin-cheating witch. I slammed the phone down. I had called from a payphone for some reason. My pager blew up for the next several hours. It didn't stop vibrating for a solid 30 minutes before I turned it back on. My phone home was lit up with VMs. Her messages started with screaming and crying, then threats, then begging, then offering bribes. And then she would go right back through the same cycle. The next day, she came to my house and knocked on the door for at least an hour, but I didn't answer. The calls and messages kept coming for weeks, even though the frequency died down a lot. She also came to my house a few more times, but I never answered, and sometimes I wasn't home. I finally answered a phone call, but when she started asking for the tapes, I told her that I didn't know what she was talking about. I listened to her beg, cry, plead, and I would eventually chime in with I don't know what tapes you are talking about. I hung up and never spoke to her again. The calls and messages eventually stopped, and I went on with my life. There never was a hidden camera, but she doesn't know that to this day. It was just an old alarm clock that looked just chunky enough to pass as a spy cam if you weren't paying attention. I grew to regret it because it probably tortured her for a long time, and it only took me about 6 months to get over my broken heart.
I hope you enjoyed the video. Please subscribe to my channel.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my 2nd year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick? What's wrong?" Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I immediately followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was. As the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." Mike! What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.